1. Let me tell you about this absolutely incredible 1963 Ford Ranchero I found on Craigslist. And let me tell you, this one's a real gem. At $12,000, we're looking at what appears to be a seriously well-preserved piece of American automotive history. This Falcon Ranchero has only 58,819 original miles on the clock, and I'm genuinely excited about how well this vehicle has been maintained. What really catches my attention is the comprehensive mechanical restoration it received under its current owner. We're talking a complete overhaul with new everything. Gas tank, fuel lines, brakes, suspension components, you name it. They've dumped over $15K just in mechanical work, which honestly makes the asking price seem pretty reasonable. The orange paint job from the 70s has an awesome story behind it. The second owner, who ran a body shop with her husband, had it painted to match a truck she admired in town. And let me tell you, it's held up remarkably well. The body is straight as an arrow, with no accident history, which is pretty rare for a vehicle of this age. For $12,000, considering the mechanical investment, the documented history, and the overall condition, this is one of those deals that makes you sit up and take notice. It's not just a collector's piece, it's actually ready to be driven and enjoyed, which is exactly what these classic utility vehicles were meant for. 2. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1964 Ford F-250, and I've got to be completely honest with you. This one's a bit of a mixed bag, but hear me out because there's something really special under the hood. Listed at $20,000, this truck is definitely showing its age. Let's address the elephant in the room right away. The body needs serious work, and those floor panels? Yeah, they need to be replaced entirely. The seller's including new carpet, but that's not going to fix the structural issues underneath. Being up front here, this is not a show truck by any means. But, and this is a huge but, what makes this truck absolutely fascinating is what's powering it. A 428 Super Cobra jet engine. For those who know their Ford history, this is basically automotive gold. This power plant is what's driving the price tag here, and honestly, that's where the real value lies. These engines are incredibly sought after, and finding one in a running truck is pretty rare. The odometer shows 18,870 miles, but given the condition and age, I'd take that with a grain of salt. On the positive side, it's been converted to a 1-ton specification, which means it's got some serious hauling capability, especially with that monster engine. The four-wheel drive and manual transmission make this a proper workhorse setup. Look, at $20,000, you're not buying this for its looks, you're buying it for that incredible engine and drivetrain. If you're mechanically inclined and looking for a project truck with some serious potential, or if you're after that legendary 428 Super Cobra jet, this might be worth checking out. Just be prepared for some significant bodywork investment if you want to make it pretty again. 3. We're looking at a 1982 Chevy El Camino listed for $13,000. And honestly, I have some concerns about this listing. First off, the seller's description is incredibly bare bones. Literally just 1982 El Camino, which is always a red flag when you're looking at a $13,000 asking price. There's no information about the mileage, engine type, condition, or any recent work done. We don't even know if it runs. The only additional details we have are that it has an automatic transmission, runs on gas, well, obviously, and has a clean title. For $13,000, you should be getting a lot more information, and frankly, a lot more car. The early 80s El Caminos can be cool vehicles, combining that unique car-truck utility with classic styling. But without any details about its condition or history, this price point seems pretty ambitious. Look, I always try to find the positive in every listing, but I've got to be straight with you. I'd be very cautious about this one. If you're interested, you'll definitely want to see it in person and ask a lot of questions. Make sure to get details about the engine, mileage, maintenance history, and any restoration work that might justify that price tag. 4. We're looking at a 1955 Ford F-100. That's definitely a project truck. But stick with me because at $5,250, this could be an interesting opportunity for the right person. Let's be completely honest here. This truck needs work, and I mean quite a bit of work. The seller's being pretty upfront about its condition, which I really appreciate. The 223 six-cylinder engine turns over freely, which is good news, but here's the catch. It's missing both the carburetor and air filter. The floors need either patching or complete replacement, and the bed floor is in rough shape. You've got cracked glass in both the driver's window and rear window that'll need addressing. But here's where it gets interesting. The fenders, which are usually rust-prone trouble spots on these old trucks, are reportedly in good shape. The doors are good too, and the radiator appears solid. With 72,700 miles on the clock and a clean title, you're looking at what could be a solid foundation for a restoration. These 55 F100S are absolutely beautiful trucks when restored, with that classic 50s styling that just can't be beat. The short box configuration is particularly desirable, and the original 3-speed column shift transmission adds to its authenticity. For $5,250, you're not buying a ready-to-roll classic, you're buying potential. If you're handy with tools, have some mechanical knowledge, and are looking for a project that won't break the bank to get started, this could be your ticket. Just make sure to factor in the cost of the missing parts and necessary repairs when considering the total investment. 5. I'm genuinely excited to share this absolute gem I found. A 1979 Chevy C20 that's been given some serious love and attention, listed at $21,500. Let me tell you why this truck is special. First off, we're looking at a heavy-duty 3/4 ton with all its original sheet metal. That's increasingly rare for these old Chevys. But what really gets my heart racing is what's under the hood. A freshly installed 454 big block with less than 5,000 miles on it, built by a reputable speed shop. That's paired with a 700 R4 overdrive transmission that's also new. And if you know these trucks, you'll appreciate how this combination gives you both serious power and decent highway manners. The current owner hasn't cut any corners here. We're talking about a comprehensive rebuild with new everything. Fresh paint in a classic green, new interior, which often gets overlooked in truck restorations, a complete exhaust system, and updated front suspension and brakes. Oh, and the AC works. That's a huge plus for a classic truck. At $21,500, considering today's classic truck market and the amount of recent work performed, this actually represents pretty solid value. You're getting a turnkey classic with modern reliability upgrades and that awesome 454 power plant. These C20S are becoming increasingly popular among collectors, and finding one with this level of recent mechanical attention is pretty rare. 6. We're checking out a 1976 Chevy C10 that's got some stories to tell, listed at a pretty approachable $4,850. Let's be real here. This is a working truck with an unknown actual mileage due to the odometer rollover, but don't let that scare you away just yet. What we've got here is a classic C10 with the tried and true 350 V8 paired with a 4-barrel carb and automatic transmission, a combination that's about as reliable as they come in these old Chevys. The good news? It's a runner. The seller's being straight up about its condition, noting it starts right up and even passed smog last year, which is actually pretty impressive for a 76. It's got power steering, which is a nice feature for these old trucks, and comes with a clean title that's current on registration. Now, at this price point, you're not getting a show truck, and that's okay. This is presented as what it is, a good work truck. The blue paint might not win any awards, but these C10S were built to work, and this one's still doing its job. Being located at a ranch in Copperopolis tells you this truck's still earning its keep. For $4,850, you're getting a piece of American truck history that you can actually use. Whether you're looking for a project base, a weekend hardware store runner, or just a classic truck to tinker with, this could be a solid starting point. The fact that it's running, driving, and smog compliant makes this price pretty reasonable in today's market. 7. We're looking at a 1982 Chevy C10 that's, well, let me be completely honest here. Something doesn't quite add up, and I want to share my thoughts with you. Listed at $2,500 with a claimed excellent condition, the seller's description raises some eyebrows. In today's market, a truly excellent condition. 82 C10 would typically command significantly more money. The seller claims it's a super nice unmalleted collector truck that runs and drives perfectly, with straight body, strong engine and transmission, and original rally wheels, all for just $2,500? That's unusually low. Now, don't get me wrong. The specs sound promising. Small block V8, automatic transmission, RWD, clean title, and 97K miles. The seller mentions all gauges work, there's no accident history, and the steering is tight. These are all great things, but at this price point in 2024, it almost sounds too good to be true. The "no emails please" note at the end is also something to consider. While some sellers prefer phone calls, it's worth being a bit cautious when communication methods are limited. If everything the seller claims is accurate, this would be an absolute steal at $2,500. These C10s are becoming increasingly collectible, and one in genuinely excellent condition would typically sell for several times this amount. 8. We're looking at a 1976 Chevy Suburban, and I need to be completely straight with you about this one, because there are some major red flags we need to discuss. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. This Suburban is being sold for $3,500 without a title. I don't care how beautiful or amazing the condition is claimed to be, a missing title is a huge issue that could turn into a real headache. The seller's story about it being worth $6,000 plus all day long if they had time to go to the DMV feels a bit convenient. Now, there are some positives worth mentioning. It's a 4x4 model with a V8, and the seller claims it has a rebuilt motor and a brand new TH350 transmission. The AC supposedly works, which is pretty rare for a vehicle of this age. But here's the thing. Despite the seller describing it as beautiful and in amazing shape, they've actually listed the condition as fair in the official listing details. That contradiction is worth noting. At $3,500, the price might seem tempting, but remember that getting a title sorted out can be a complicated, time-consuming process that isn't guaranteed to succeed. Some states are much stricter than others about title issues, and you could end up with a vehicle you can't legally register. 9. Let's talk about this 1978 Ford F250. I found listed for $5,000, and I've got to point out some interesting discrepancies in this listing. First off, there's some confusion in the seller's description. They've listed it as both manual and automatic transmission, and somehow as front-wheel drive, which wasn't even an option for these trucks. They were all rear-wheel or four-wheel drive. This kind of inconsistency always makes me a bit cautious. Now let's talk about what we're actually dealing with here. At 154K miles, this old Ford has seen its share of roads. The seller claims it runs good and has a clean interior, which is positive. However, we've got some significant issues to address. There's a rusted hole in the driver's side floor. That's a safety and structural concern, folks. And it's missing its tailgate. The asking price of $5,000 seems a bit optimistic given these issues. While these late 70s F250s are indeed becoming collectible, this one needs some serious attention. That floor rust could be indicative of more hidden rust issues, and replacement tailgates aren't exactly cheap these days. On the positive side, it does have a clean title, and the seller is open to reasonable offers with that OBO, or best offer tag. If you're handy with metalwork and looking for a project truck, this might be worth checking out, but I'd definitely go in with a lower offer, considering the work needed. 10. We're looking at a 1982 Ford F150 that's got an interesting story to tell, listed at $2,400. And let me be straight with you about what we're looking at here. This is a proper working truck with a legendary 300 inline-six engine, not a V6 as the seller states, small correction there, paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. With 77,000 original miles and being family-owned since new, that's pretty impressive. But here's the full scoop. Let's address the elephant in the room. This truck has been a plow truck its entire life, and it shows. The seller's honest about the rust throughout the body, which is pretty typical for a plow truck. These vehicles live hard lives, constantly exposed to salt and moisture. The plow itself needs a new motor, so factor that into your plans if you're thinking about winter work. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite its rough appearance, there's some real potential here. The 306-cylinder is one of Ford's most reliable engines ever made, and the seller claims it starts right up in any weather. The 4x4 system works like a dream. It's got brand new tires and a working heater, which is actually pretty important in an old work truck. 11. We're checking out a really interesting 1975 Chevy C10 Silverado short bed that's listed for $9,500. And I've got to say, this one's worth talking about. Let's dive into what makes this truck special. First off, it's powered by a 350 V8 paired with a TH 350 automatic. A bulletproof combination that's been upgraded with some nice performance touches like an Edelbrock carb, intake manifold, and some dress-up items with the chrome valve covers and air cleaner. The sellers being upfront that the engine's strong, starts well, and doesn't smoke or leak. All good signs. Now here's what's really catching my attention. This truck came from Pueblo, Colorado, and that's significant because it means we're dealing with a dry climate vehicle. The seller's honest about the rust situation. The floors and windshield frame, typical trouble spots, are solid, with only 2 spots of rust in the bed and some in the left front cab support. That's actually pretty minimal for a truck of this age. Recent work includes a new battery, starter, tires, glass, body trim, and they've even installed a new ACC carpet kit. The factory AC is present, which is a nice bonus for these old trucks, and they've just done a fresh tune-up and oil change. Yes, the odometer has rolled over, so the 71,000 miles showing isn't the true mileage, but that's pretty common for these old trucks. What matters more is the overall condition and maintenance. 12. We're looking at a seriously interesting 1985 GMC Sierra that's far from stock. And I've got to tell you, this is one unique build listed at $20,000. Let's talk about what makes this truck special. First off, this started life as a 6.2 diesel, but has been transformed with a 6.0 LS swap. And they didn't just drop the engine in and call it a day. We're talking about a properly built setup here. Rebuilt motor, new machined heads, stage 2 cam, fresh internals, and it's all tied together with a PSI wiring harness. The transmission is a built 4L680, which is a serious upgrade for handling that LS power. The cool thing about this truck is it's still registered as a diesel, which means no smog checks ever. That's a big deal in some states. It's been set up to run on either E85 or regular 87 gas, giving you some nice flexibility at the pump. The stance is dialed in with a Beltec 2, 4 lowering kit, and they've upgraded the braking system with Hydro Boost power brakes and rear disc conversion using a 96 Impala rear end. That's a smart upgrade for modern stopping power. What I really dig about this build is they've kept that sweet patina exterior while modernizing everything underneath. You're getting power windows, upgraded gauges, and even a decent stereo system. It's like a sleeper with character. 13. I'm looking at a 1968 Chevy C10 listed at $18,000, and, well, I've got to be honest, this listing raises some concerns. While the seller has marked the condition as excellent, and the price point suggests a well-sorted truck, there's an alarming lack of information here. For $18,000, we should be getting a lot more details about what we're looking at. The only specific information provided is that it has a 6-cylinder engine and an upgraded 700 R4 transmission, which is actually a nice upgrade for these trucks, giving you overdrive capability. The odometer is broken, so we have no idea about the mileage. The gray paint is mentioned, but we don't know if it's original, when it was painted, or its condition. There's no information about the truck's history, recent maintenance, or any restoration work that might justify the price tag. Look, these 68 C10s are fantastic trucks, and they're becoming increasingly collectible. The combination of the inline-6 with the 700 R4 transmission could make for a great daily driver setup. But at $18,000, buyers deserve a lot more information. The seller's note about no trading or cheap offers and only contact if you're serious is fine. But without providing more details about the truck's condition and history, it's hard to determine if this price point is justified. 14. We're checking out a 1984 Chevy K5 Blazer that's got some serious upgrades, listed at $16,000. And let me tell you why this one's interesting. First off, this is a Nebraska truck, which is significant because it means less exposure to coastal or heavy road salt conditions. The sellers being upfront that while it's a 40-year-old vehicle with some flaws, it's not your typical clapped-out K5, and the list of recent work backs that up. Let's talk about the good stuff. It's running a 350 engine that was installed in 2020, with paperwork to prove it, and the transmission was just rebuilt in January 2024. The suspension's been upgraded with a 2-inch rough country lift kit and 6 shocks, plus they've added 33-inch tires. That's a solid setup for these trucks. They've addressed a lot of crucial maintenance items. New ball joints, rotors and pads up front, upgraded wheel studs all around, and new rear axle shafts. The rear floor has been repaired, a common issue on these, and they've added Killmat sound deadening throughout with new carpet front and rear. The interior's gotten some love too, with updated seats, a Kenwood Exelon stereo system, custom rear panels, and a soft upper, which is a nice practical addition for a K5. At $16,000, considering the recent mechanical work, transmission rebuild, and overall condition, this is actually in the ballpark for a well-maintained K5 Blazer in today's market. The seller's honest about there being some flaws, but they're also including additional parts with the sale. 15. We're looking at a 1971 Ford F-250 Ranger XLT Camper Special that's got some interesting features listed at $10,000, and let me give you the honest scoop on this one. First, there's a bit of a disconnect here. The seller has marked it as excellent condition, but then states the truck is not perfect. So let's focus on what we actually know. This is a Washington State truck with just 3 owners, which is pretty good for a vehicle over 50 years old. It's packing the robust 390 V8, showing 75K miles. And it's got some nice upgrades, including an Edelbrock carb, electronic ignition, and dual exhaust. Those Krager wheels add a perfect period-correct touch to the look. What's particularly interesting is this is a Ranger XLT Camper Special. That was a premium trim level back in the day. And these Camper Specials came with heavy-duty suspension components to handle slide-in campers. The fact it's been used as a work truck, but not daily driven, for the past decade suggests it's still doing what it was built to do. The green paint and 2WD configuration make this a classic example of a 70s Ford truck. The seller's honesty about it not being perfect but being reliable and fun to drive is refreshing. That's exactly what you want to hear from someone who's actually used the truck rather than just stored it. At $10,000, considering today's market for classic trucks, this could be a fair deal if everything checks out mechanically. These early 70s Fords are getting harder to find, especially in Ranger XLT Camper Special trim. 16. We're looking at a 1978 Ford F-150 Ranger that's listed at $3,500. And I've got to be straight with you. This one's definitely a project truck that needs some love. The seller's being refreshingly honest about this being a mechanic's special, and they're not kidding. The truck's currently running poorly with overheating issues, and the temperature gauge doesn't work, which is pretty concerning when you're dealing with overheating problems. That's going to need to be addressed right away by whoever picks this up. Now, it's not all bad news. They've actually done quite a bit of recent work. New tires, carburetor, brakes, battery, alternator, timing belt. Though I think they might mean timing chain since these V8s don't use belts. And a top radiator hose. The basic amenities work. You've got heat, wipers, and even a working FM radio. Plus, it comes with a canopy for that 8-foot bed, which is a nice bonus. At 77,009 miles showing on the odometer, and considering it's a 78 Ranger trim level, which was a higher-end model, this could be a worthy project for the right person. The clean title is definitely a plus. For $3,500, you're buying a project, plain and simple. The overheating issue could be something relatively simple, like a bad water pump or thermostat, or it could be more serious. You'd need to diagnose that before making a decision. 17. We're looking at a 1966 Ford F-100 that's... Well, let me be completely honest here because this listing raises some interesting points. Listed at $9,500. This truck has apparently received a $7,500 paint job and is claimed to be rust-free. Being from New Mexico helps with that. But here's where things get a bit concerning. The current running condition is, let's say, unconventional. The seller admits it's an unfinished project that runs only with a jury-rigged setup, a battery, start button, and temporary fuel system, none of which come with the truck. That's right, you'll need to bring your own setup just to get it running to drive it home, or better yet, bring a trailer, which honestly sounds like the smarter option here. While the seller claims it runs and drives, stops and shifts, that's only with their temporary setup. This is essentially a beautiful shell, assuming that $7,500 paint job is as good as claimed, that needs proper mechanical sorting. At $9,500, you're mainly paying for that paint job and a rust-free New Mexico body. The seller seems pretty motivated with all those make offer and OBO exclamations, so there might be room for negotiation. 18. We're taking a closer look at a classic 1960 Ford F-250 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking $5,000 for this vintage workhorse, and from what they've shared, it seems like a pretty solid deal. Now let's dive into the details. The seller mentions that this F-250 is a real powerhouse, running great despite its age. However, they do admit that it needs a new clutch, which is why they've priced it a bit lower than what they'd normally ask. If the clutch were in top shape, they say they'd be looking at around $6,500 to $7,000. One thing to note is that the odometer is broken, so the actual mileage is unknown. The seller states that it has 50,000 miles on it, but without a functioning odometer, it's hard to verify that claim. The good news is that this F-250 passes emissions and comes with a clean title. It's got the original straight six-cylinder engine under the hood, and everything else is stock, which is a big plus for those who appreciate originality. The seller describes the truck as super clean and straight, mentioning that it was a mountain truck. There is some minor surface rust, but that's to be expected with a vehicle of this age. Now the seller is upfront about the truck needing some TLC. They even mention that they have the new clutch ready to go, but don't have the garage space to do the swap themselves. So if you're handy with a wrench or know someone who is, this could be a great project truck. Alternatively, if you're looking for a classic driver, you could always get the clutch replaced and hit the road. 19. We've got a real treat for you, a 1982 Ford E350 that's been converted into a one-of-a-kind camper van. The current owners are asking $9,000 for this unique rig, and based on the description they've provided, it seems like it could be a fantastic opportunity for someone looking to hit the road and explore. Now let's dive into the details. This Econoline started its life as a transport van for a hospital in the Pacific Northwest before making its way to Montana and then Minnesota. Along the way, it's been well cared for and has undergone a series of upgrades and modifications to turn it into the perfect weekend camping rig. The previous owner did a lot of work to make this van comfortable and functional, including adding insulation, wood paneling, a queen-sized bed frame, LED lighting, a 12 volts refrigerator, and custom cabinetry. They even installed a system to charge the onboard house batteries so you can power all your essentials on the go. Since purchasing the van in March 2022, the current owners have made even more improvements, like adding a MaxxAir fan, 200W of solar panels, a memory foam mattress, and Pergo wood flooring. They've also kept up with regular maintenance, including oil changes every 3,000 miles or annually, whichever comes first. Now, it's important to note that this is still a 43-year-old vehicle, so it's not going to drive like a brand new car. The owners mention that the steering is a bit loose and the ride can be bouncy at times, but overall they describe it as a solid rig. The front shocks may need to be replaced at some point, but the previous owner included a box of replacement parts just in case. 20. We're taking a closer look at a 1971 Chevy C10 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking $17,000 for this vintage long bed, but they're also willing to let it go for $14,000 without the tires and rims. Now, let's dive into the details. The seller mentions that this C10 needs some work, specifically with the front brake calipers and a small transmission leak. While these issues aren't necessarily deal breakers, it's important to factor in the cost of repairs when considering the overall price of the truck. On the bright side, the seller notes that the body is in good shape, which is a big plus for a vehicle of this age. The paint is also described as being in fairly good condition. although it's worth noting that fairly good can be subjective. It might be worth asking the seller for more detailed photos or taking a closer look in person to get a better sense of the paint's actual condition. Under the hood, this C10 is powered by an 8-cylinder engine, which is likely the classic 350 cubic inch V8 that was common in these trucks. The seller doesn't mention any specifics about the engine's condition or performance, so that's something you definitely want to inquire about before making a decision. One thing to keep in mind is that the odometer reading might not be entirely accurate. The seller notes that the odometer is broken and has rolled over, so the actual mileage is unknown. While 58,000 miles would be incredibly low for a truck of this age, it's more likely that the true mileage is higher.